Hi, this is Anna Crowe with the Get Real podcast, where CEOs, CMOs, and communications experts share their real advice. It's 5 questions in under 9 minutes because we get to it real fast. So let's get to it. Please welcome today's guest. In a few sentences, could you please tell us who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Hi, Anna, and thank you so much for having me today. My name is Krakowski. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for an Israeli startup company called DeepDub.ai. We created a platform that uses AI and deep learning to enable content creators and content owners to transfer the content from one language to another while retaining and extending the original entertainment experience. Think of Morgan Freeman speaking in different languages like Spanish, Italian, German, etc. So it's pretty fascinating and a lot of fun. I also serve as an advisory member of the customer experience program of the University of Houston Bauer Business College.
I love that. And you're the perfect person for our podcast because we focus on creating connections, and which is a lot of what you guys are able to do by offering this experience and different languages and all these things, as well as connecting with customers and employees and others. So our first question is really focused on authentic connections. I hear from other leaders, especially marketing leaders, but also CEOs, that creating authentic connections with customers can be challenging when it's very noisy. And being in the AI space, I would love to hear your take on that. Don't know if it applies or not, but let's hear it.
But yeah, you know what? I don't know if I can apply specifically to AI or specifically apply AI to it, but generally I would say, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and usually when I hear connecting to customers, or even start talking about connecting to customers, I always also start thinking about value, and the things that come to mind are you providing a product or service to your customers that delivers enough value to their business or to their lives? What is your value proposition, your business's value proposition? So especially when talking about startup companies, but just as much for bigger corporations, I think understanding your value proposition would allow you to better tailor your customers' experience and allow you to create stronger bonds with your customers based on the value that you provide to them.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And to your point, if we're not solving a problem or creating value, then what's really the point, right? So I think that's really, really important. And I would assume that part of it would also be listening to your customer and understanding what's important to them, right? So you can create that value.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have to listen, understand, and tailor the value proposition to your customers' needs.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's fantastic advice. Do you have any other real advice to our listeners and other leaders? Is there anything else that you think is really important?
So I think it's a great question, and I love the topic of of sharing experience among business leaders and especially entrepreneurs. I'm a serial entrepreneur, like I mentioned, and in 2020 I had to shut down my previous startup company due to COVID, on which I was actually working for more than 6 years. And what I learned in the process is that there's nothing like failure to teach you how to be more successful. So out of all that has been learned in the process, I actually choose right now to talk about how to deal with failure as entrepreneurs and leaders in our businesses. And maybe I'd like to add a short story here into the mix. A few months ago, my 8-year-old son, out of the blue, came and in a very dramatic voice said, "Dad, never taste your tears. They're salty." So on that specific moment, this was extremely funny. And he continued to mention that, he read about it in a book. But as I continued to ponder about this phrase, I realized it really has many more layers to it. And if you think about it, we cry when we're sad, happy, sometimes out of anger, maybe, laughing. But whatever the reason is, to me at least, tears are a symbol of the past. It's something that already happened, And specifically, salty tears are associated with emotions, mostly sadness and anger. And if so, what does it mean? Never taste your tears. To me, it means, don't dwell on the past. When I apply it to my recent experience of, shutting down a company, as much as shutting down my previous company because of whatever reason it was an emotional process. But it has been done. It's in the past, and we need to move forward. And so, in your business, you deal with failure by learning from it, then moving forward. There's no need to, dwell on it for too long. So that would be my advice.
That's a great story. And I can just picture your son coming to that realization. And it's so wonderful to see that in kids. I have an 8-year-old boy as well. And when they have this aha moment and
Yeah.
you're able to look at it from their perspective, and you yourself can have an aha moment, right? Like, well, I
Yeah,
never
absolutely.
thought about that. We were just discussing the Wizard of Oz with my kids, and they were all obviously the plot, but then we also got into this whole thing of, well, they were looking for the wizard to help them and to make them better, but at the end of the day, they already had all the traits they needed. They just,
Exactly.
they were already equipped with it. They don't need somebody else to help them. I'm like, yes, the answers are all inside of us, and we look at it from a different vantage point as adults and as entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals. And then when you hear it from a kid, it's also cool. So I love that story, and I appreciate you sharing that. And you're so right. If we didn't have those mistakes, how could we get better, right? How could we
Exactly.
learn? Or failures. Very cool. Well, before we get to our final question, are there any other successful executives such as yourself that you would like to give a shout out to, or just appreciate on this podcast?
Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to do that. And I would say that the first person that first, I'd like to give a shout out would be my wife, who is an entrepreneur herself. Beyond the fact that she managed to endure me during the past year with all the lockdowns and pandemics, she also founded her own company back in 2015, and she sells a very unique product. And with a lot of persistence and consistency, was able to bring it on her own, really, to retail stores all over Texas. So I'm very proud of her. And go check her company, her products. It's called Muffin Else. The other person I have was very inspiring to me. My previous startup company was in the senior care market, and a person I met as part of that activity was her name is Sharon Emick. She's based in New York. She's the founder and CEO of a company called Wave, which is WAHVE. I think it stands for Work at Home Vintage Experts. And she does something that is very inspiring to me. She found a unique way to pair companies looking for specific skills with retired professionals. So it creates a win-win situation where retired professionals can still contribute as part of the workforce, and in many cases they have tons of experience to contribute, and she's able to find places for them, in the workforce. So I love what she does. She founded the company at 65, and that was more than 10 years ago. So super inspiring lady, and go check that as well.
Oh, thank you for sharing those, and how cool. And you're right. It really, I mean, from the professional experience, the life experience, you really can't match that. And also such a huge value add for those people who are retired. So we'll definitely check her out in the company as well. And kudos to your wife for continuing and growing her business while supporting you as well on Level for
Absolutely.
the Year.
All the way. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, our last question is more of a fun one. Can you tell us about your first job?
Sure. So outside professional, really going back to the first job takes me 30 plus years back to when I was a teenager. Yeah, I'm that old. My first job, it's more of a realization, that I'm that old. Um, my first job was, believe it or not, was selling balloons during a summer vacation I had back then. Right now I live in Dallas, and for the past I don't know how many years, back then I lived in Israel with my parents, obviously. I had to take an early morning 40-minute bus drive from my parents' home to Tel Aviv, where I picked up about, I don't know, 30 helium-filled balloons, and then had to spend several hours walking along the promenade trying to sell them. And I think back there and then is when I started to, to understand what work ethics means, learn about persistency, about sales, about talking to customers. So I think the hustler mentality that I honed myself right now, I think a lot of it started back then. The entrepreneurship, the idea that you gotta make things happen.
That's awesome. Appreciate you going back in time and giving us that story. Fantastic. All right. Well, how could people get a hold of you or learn more about what you're doing and your company?
Well, sure. I mean, it's easy. Visit our website, deepdub.ai. You can also look for me on LinkedIn and message me there, or I'm on Clubhouse if you want to jump on and look for my name there. Jump on Clubhouse, open a room, and have a chat.
Nice. I appreciate you joining us today, and thanks everyone so much for tuning in. This is Anna Crowe. For more insights, visit us at crowepr.com. Thanks so much. Make it a great day.